Welcome to the Explainer. What if the way we think about education is just, well, wrong? Today we're going to look at a philosophy that says real learning doesn't come from a classroom. Instead, it's something that's already a part of our everyday lives. So let's just jump right in with a big question. Maybe the big question. What are schools actually for? I mean, are they there to help our kids blossom into their best selves? Or are they just preparing them to be another cog in the economic machine? All right, so to really get a handle on this new idea, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to fix. And that problem is this huge gap that seems to exist between what happens in school and what happens in, real life. This quote really hits the nail on the head. A parent described the system as a nursery that prepares saplings for industry. Think about that. The idea here is that our school system wasn't born out of a desire for individual kids to explore and discover. Nope. It was built for the Industrial Revolution, to create a workforce that was standardized and, well, did what it was told. And this is where you can really see the clash, right? On one side, you have the needs of industry. Everybody the same, everybody following the rules. But on the other side, you have what makes us human. Our uniqueness, our creativity, our desire to figure things out for ourselves. And the argument is, you just can't have it both ways. Our system had to pick one, and it didn't pick uniqueness. So the bottom line is, there's this massive disconnect. Schooling has one goal, but helping a human being grow and develop has a totally different one. This philosophy says it's not about stuffing kids with information, it's about uncovering the incredible treasures that are already inside them. Okay, so we've talked about the problem. Now, what's the alternative? Let's dive into what this philosophy calls real education. Basically, real education, or Fithri Talim, flips the whole idea on its head. It says learning isn't some subject you schedule like math from 9 to 10. It's like breathing, it's just happening all the time. Knowledge isn't something you pour into a kid's head like water into a cup. It actually grows from inside the child, watered by real everyday experiences. And here's a fantastic example of what that actually looks like. Instead of reading a chapter on construction, a group of kids went to a brick kiln. I mean, they didn't just see it, they felt the heat from the furnace. They got their hands dirty and actually made bricks. They made the connection themselves. Oh, this is how houses get built. It wasn't abstract, it was real, physical, and something they'll probably never forget. So you might be wondering, okay, but how does this work? Is it just chaos? Not at all. The whole thing is built on three really simple, powerful pillars that basically replace the old school subjects, especially when kids are young. Pillar number one is communication. And it sounds so simple, right? But we're not talking about grammar worksheets here. We're talking about constant, meaningful conversation. Everything the child sees, touches, or wonders about becomes a dialogue. A trip to the store isn't just an errand, it's 100 little conversations. And that conversation, that's the main engine for learning. Next up, pillar two, imagination. And this one is so important. In this way of thinking, imagination isn't just for fairy tales and playing pretend. It's actually the foundation for everything else. For logic, for science, for math. It's the invisible work happening inside a child's brain. You can't give it a grade, you can't see it on a test, but it's maybe the most critical work of all. And that brings us to the third pillar, vocabulary. But again, forget about those spelling lists. This is about connecting words to life. It's about building a vocabulary where every single word is tied to a real thing, a real feeling, a real experience that the child has had. It's the difference between knowing a word and truly understanding it. This little story about a paper cutter is just perfect. So a child is asked to go get one. She knows the word paper cutter. She's even seen one. But she comes back empty-handed. Why? Because in her mind, the word and the actual thing weren't connected. It was like two separate computer files that had never been linked. That link only happens when you actually use the thing. And closing that gap, that's what this is all about. All right, so we have these three pillars, but what does it look like day to day? Well, it's not about sitting down with a lesson plan. It's about creating an atmosphere of, well, playful curiosity. And a lot of the methods are really just simple games. But don't let the simplicity fool you. These games are designed to build some seriously powerful thinking skills, the kind of mental wiring that will help a kid for their entire life. Okay, check out this pairing game. So simple. You're just walking down the street and you see a road. The game is to connect that road to anything else you can see. Road and tree, because trees grow next to roads. Road and paint, because of the white lines. road and trash, because sadly, you see trash on roads. It seems like nothing, but what you're actually doing is training the brain to make connections. And that ability to see how things relate, that's the core of both creativity and critical thinking. And the same idea works for things like math. Think about it. The old way is, go pick up 4 stones. Okay, the kid counts to 4, mission accomplished. But in this approach, you might say, go pick up as many stones as Sarah has. Whoa! Now the kid has to look, compare, and figure out what the same as means. They're learning about equality, the real logic behind math, not just reciting numbers. The source calls this logico-maths. So, what's the point of all this? If it's not about getting good grades, what's the actual goal? Where are we trying to get to? Sobia Nareen, the founder of this philosophy, has a beautiful way of putting it. She says we have to think of it like farming, not like a factory. You plant a seed, you water it, you give it sun, but you can't force it to grow. You have to have patience and trust that something is happening under the soil. You can't just pull on the sprout to make it come out faster.
And that means you have to be okay with the fact that a lot of the learning is invisible. There's this great story about a little girl who had never been formally taught to write or spell. And then one day, out of the blue, she just picked up a pencil and perfectly wrote her dad's entire name. It's proof that all that time the learning was happening inside, quietly connecting the dots, until she was ready to show it.
So, let's wrap this up. What are the big ideas to take away? First, learning is natural, not industrial. Second, the process of thinking is way more important than the product of a test. Third, you've got to be patient. Kids grow on their own schedule. And finally, the real goal isn't just a smart kid with a great report card, it's to nurture a whole human being. Someone who is kind, creative, curious, and most importantly, someone who knows how to think for themselves. And that really brings us full circle, back to the very first question we asked. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. If we could just wipe the slate clean, forget everything we think we know about school, and start over from scratch, what would we decide the true purpose of education should be?